Hello and welcome to another video. Now The Last of Us is a series I've been very sceptical of ever since I first heard about it, since the video games, the first in particular, are amongst my favourites of all time. And when you get involved in the story and the lives of the characters and all the perils they go through, it's difficult to see and hear something different. So I'll get into aspects of the first episode, but I'll avoid spoilers, assuming that not everyone watching this has played the first game, let alone played through the entire thing, as it can last from around 20 to 40 hours, depending on how much you want to do within it. So I'll attempt to get across some changes you'll come across between this and the game, but still avoid revealing anything you wouldn't want to know until you come across it for the first time, whether in the game or the series. I may go into more detail about each episode later in my review on DVDfever.co.uk, but only once the respective episodes have been broadcast, and I'll add the content in behind a spoiler header so you can't trip over it accidentally. Also in this review I won't include any TV footage, apart from the fact that it's preview versions I've seen, some of which may be missing final FX shots etc. I can be doing without the copyright strikes. So for the opener, the first thing you see is something brand new, and like any additionally created scenes, I don't know if this was part of the original lore or just hasn't shown up until now, but we begin in 1968 with a TV discussion about a pandemic virus potentially happening, with two epidemiologists, one being played by John Hannah, talking about how viruses can make us ill, but fungi can alter our mind and tell us what to do, where to go, and control us, with the potential happening if the Earth got warmer. Oh dear. Yes, a global warming thing. And there was me thinking it was only Channel 4 News and the BBC which had a monopoly on such scaremongering nonsense. Then with the time frames changing, such that the series proper starts in 2003, rather than 1993 for the game, we're also introduced to Joel and Sarah on the morning of day zero. This is all leading up to the evening at the point where the actual game starts, albeit the first scene in the game taking place at 10 to midnight, and in the TV show it's 10 PM, and Sarah presents Joel with a present for his birthday, which is identical to the game's first scene. However, since this is 2003 and not 1993, one of his gifts is a DVD, which weren't on sale until 1998 in the US and 99 in the UK, and this is for Curtis and the Viper 2, the game referenced by Ellie to Dina in the second game while they're on a recce. As a film she's going to suggest that she and Joel watches back at the compound, since he's really into cheesy 80s action movies, but now it's Sarah who first brings this up. I will also add that the early morning scene features a clip of Sarah in school, but as it's 2003, they have to suffer a fate worse than zombies. Yeah, having to put up with a picture of George W. Bush on the wall. Seriously though, and again I don't want to give spoilers, so I'll just say, if it looks like not a lot is happening in the foreground, then also keep one eye on the background. We still see the same in-car camera as Joel drives Tommy and Sarah in search of safety, and beyond that, without giving any spoilers for anyone who hasn't played the game, all I'll say is that the first 30 minutes of the first episode are largely faithful to the game's opening chapter, before we see where it says 20 years later. At this point, the game shows us a conversation between Joel and Tess, whereas the TV series sees the cops dealing with a young girl they've chanced upon, who's out walking on her own. It's not Ellie, but it does lead into Joel and Tess's introduction in 2023. In fact, like with Joel and Sarah's introduction, there's also early introductions for some other key characters, but I'm not going to list them here, and you'll need to check out my review on DVD Fever for those. Flicking through some of the early chapters in the game, these additional scenes means that rather than the series lasting forever and ever, it will cut down time so it can advance the events on a little bit. So for example, it doesn't show me spending forever looking for spare ammo on the ground. An hour of that would have people fast forwarding in their droves. But now let's get on to the massive elephant in the room. The casting. Oh boy. I've certainly mentioned this a time or two in my videos here, but let's be brief so as to save my voice. Ellie in the video game version of The Last of Us is more likely to drown any baddies in the game or shoot them in the face, but for the show, Bella Ramsey doesn't look like she'll hurt a fly. Apparently, over 100 young women were auditioned for this role, so I can't believe there weren't any actresses who actually looked more like her and were a lot more suitable. I know she was in Game of Thrones, I've not seen that. She was in a film I've seen a few years ago called Two for Joy with Samantha Morton, which was a pretty good film, but here, just not working for me. And then we move on to Joel, changing from Texan to Chilean. No wait, It turns out that Joel is from Texas after all, but actor Pedro Pascal is from Chile, whereas the original video game actor Troy Baker is from Texas. Yes, he's not a big name, but seeing his picture on Wikipedia, he could be dolled up to be Joel. In fact, Pedro even says, as Joel, that he's from Texas. But he certainly doesn't sound like it. I mean, why not just get an actor who can do a Texan accent, like Troy Baker? Gabriel Luna, as Tommy, was actually born in Texas. But doesn't seem at all how I'd envisaged Tommy after playing the game. He certainly doesn't really sound Texan either. Anna Torv as Tess is fine though, and for Marlene, Merle Dandridge is the original video game actress, so she's technically the best casting here. Now for Ellie, in case you're not aware, she's voiced in the game by Ashley Johnson, who, now, is almost 40, so she wouldn't pass for a 14-year-old girl any more than I would. And I'm a man! However, do you know who does work in what I've seen so far, which is the first 4 episodes at the time of recording this? Nick Offerman as Bill, a friend of Joel's, and Murray Bartlett as Frank, and if you've not played the game then you'll learn about their characters before too long. But we still have one more character left to discuss, Sarah. She's changed from a white girl, aged around 10 to 12, to a mixed race 18-year-old. Doesn't make a lick of sense. Okay, technically you could argue that the best thing about Channel 5's Anne Boleyn drama was Jodie Turner-Smith in the titular role. But while she's a great actress, the rest of the show wasn't up to much, so it seemed less of an issue. Here the change is just too ridiculous, and I'd love to know what the thinking was behind it. Early on, there's lots of walking around and plot exposition, which works in the game because you have to look around and work out where to go next, such as when there's a blockage on the path. Since it's fiction, there's always a way to get from A to B, unlike reality. Then again in games, sometimes even a small mound of grass can completely fox a character, whereas in reality you just step up onto it. Doing a game to TV or movie conversion rarely works, which makes you wonder why people still bother. Do you know which is the only really successful one in my eyes? 2018's Rampage with Dwayne Johnson. As for why, I'll let you read that review on my website, which I'll link below. But hey, at least for this one, the music comes from the same man, Gustavo Santaolalla. I probably pronounced that wrong, so I apologise. Oh, and they use the same clicker sounds from the game. Oh, and nothing beats trying to get past the clickers in the game by yourself, though, including one underground scene where the room's completely full of them, as well as a bloater. But if you manage not to disturb them, you can actually sneak right past them, and sneak slowly, since unlike most zombies, clickers are the worst to deal with. You can't just simply punch them in the face and run off. They generally take a few shots to the head before they finally capitulate, and ammo is usually scarce. One of the items you'd find and use in the game, and which also comes up here, is the use of rolls of tape. Unlike real life in this program, it doesn't take 100 tries to pick at the end of the tape before you can actually use it. Some things that are nice to see, albeit a bit grim, is the cordyceps wrapping around a corpse when someone dies. That's not something you'd concentrate on in the game because you're too busy trying to save yourselves, but here, the camera is allowed to linger. So hey, a plus! Also, it's fascinating to see the city and the depiction of the zombies, including an image which was shown online some time ago, with the 2 skyscrapers where one has crashed into the other at an angle in a scene from the game. But every time the camera cuts back to Pedro Pascal or Bella Ramsey, my suspension of disbelief is unsuspended again. You know, towards the end of the opener, Pedro really does try to make his voice sound a bit more gruff. But he still isn't Joel. And I think it was in episode 3 I heard him sound a lot more like Joel, but as soon as I watched episode 4, which as I say is where I'm up to at the moment, it all went out the window. I still can't get over it. Some of the casting is just so unfortunate. While I've gone through the first game in full twice, along with a few chapters of the remake, I've been just as affected with the opening chapter in every single version. However, when it comes to this TV show, this is not the case, and I was left cold. The 2013 game, in original PS3, remastered PS4 and remade PS5 flavours, is, as I mentioned, one of my all-time favourite games. The chemistry between Joel and Ellie is beautiful, and while I've mentioned the 2 lead actors for that game already, it's pleasing that both are getting small roles in this actual series, as has already been confirmed online. I won't go into detail about who they play, however, but once each episode ends, I'll go into more detail on my website review on DVDfever.co.uk, as previously mentioned. Okay, thanks very much for watching. Please comment below with any thoughts you have. The programme starts on HBO in the US at 9 PM on Sunday, January the 15th. Yes, at 9 PM, which is equivalent to 2 AM in the UK on Monday, January the 16th on Sky Atlantic. This gets confusing. So anyway, comment below, and also please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe if you haven't already, click on the bell for all the notifications. No, don't click like a clicker because that would be a bit weird. And cue Genesis.